But now we have Petri Vaisanen, who's the director of SAO, and he'll be chatting to us about the SAO and what we're doing here and going forward. Are you full now?
Cool. Thank you. So yeah, thank you, Daniel. Thank you, ASSA, for inviting me, and thank you, Takalani, once again. I have to mention that this is the perfect moment to once again highlight the special privilege we have in this country concerning astronomy, that we have government enthusiastic backing for these kinds of, so both professional astronomy and various things. I've been in a couple of international conferences over the last few months, and I have to tell you, other countries are jealous of the way in South Africa we have high-level government support for astronomy. It's absolutely wonderful. So thank you once again. I've said it many times, but I'm never tired of saying that line, because it is special. So okay, so I'll having now heard the kind of the bigger picture astronomy landscape in the country, I'll zoom in a little bit more to SAO, optical astronomy. Just a very brief overview, and for the locals, of course, you know all this. Maybe some updates to those of you who've heard me talk more recently over the last year. But let's see. So obviously, you all know that we're a national facility of the NRF, National Research Foundation, one of the 5 national facilities here. And we had that wonderful 200-year celebration. Unfortunately, a little bit dampened by the COVID pandemic, but nevertheless, 200 years old, this place, with the McLean historic buildings, all of that. And I'm sure there'll be much more of talk about that both here and but then later on in other conferences. Just take this one. And but SAO as a whole, so I'll very briefly touch on a couple of these things. Let me use the cursor so that those of you online will see as well. Yeah, so at a very high level, SAO is about doing research ourselves. We're a research institute, but then very importantly, we're a national facility, so we provide the telescopes in Sutherland. I mean, they used to be here, now they're in Sutherland, the research telescopes. So providing them, building them, developing them, running them, operating them, so providing that service. In doing that, we need to develop new technology. So not only to, and our vision, I think I'll touch that a little bit briefly later on. So not only fixing and maintaining them, but we actually do R&D, research development for new instruments. And we want to, that's one of our big vision focus areas, to expand on that, to build bigger and bigger instrumentation, scientific astronomical instrumentation, not only for us, but actually also for others as well in the future. And then, of course, we do training, postgrad students, lots of them, and it's our right in the middle of our focus and mandates and what we want to do, and then science education. We'll have a talk about that later. Sibuile is here as well. But then the profession, the astronomy itself happens in Sutherland. So of course, a lot of people know this place here, and we're here in Cape Town, the headquarters, but really the core of the whole continental optical infrared astronomy is in Sutherland, which we're very proud of. And the largest telescope, again, of course, you know this, but we're now, it is 11, yeah, so about 11, 12 years into science operations. So in DK's slide, you saw that the first slide was 2005. We're now 11, 12 years into normal, regular science operations, which are going very well. And yeah, I'll just maybe mention this, that we can operate, and the team, I see Roz is here, anybody else from the SALT team here at the moment. So during pandemic, they were able to operate SALT remotely from, not only from Cape Town here, but from Madagascar and UK and whatnot. So one of the kind of silver linings of the pandemic was that it really pushed us into remote operations, and we never really lost a beat. We continued throughout the lockdowns, operating both SALT and the other telescopes and SAO. And yeah. So that's going all well. And TK already mentioned this multi-messenger thing. And I mentioned this because it's really important to know that all astronomy done here at SAO really is multi-wavelength. We are responsible for providing the optical infrared instrumentation and telescopes, but the science we do, the science we support, and how the people, how the researchers here are, their mindset is all multi-wavelength. And it's important because, as Kalani said, there's a lot of money put into this, and we want to make use of it as efficiently and impactfully as possible. And the best science typically is done when you put together optical, radio, X-ray, and whatnot. And that's a lot of our researchers are doing that in practice, and their papers are involved in all of these. And yeah, indeed, we just talked about it. We were involved in that gravitational wave events, and yeah, very much so. I think I had it up. Yeah, there was a slide made it during that time 3-4 years ago, where many of our telescopes in Sutherland were part of that follow-up of the gravitational wave thing, and the cloud things was taking. This picture is from a publication with probably 1/3 of the world's astronomy population on its 3,000-4,000 people on the authorship, and the main figure in the paper showing how the spectrum of that neutron star merger developed, the very first one in time. So these are days after the explosion. The very first one is from us, from SALT, which we're very proud of. All right, so there's a big list of telescopes up over there, hosted facilities that some of them we are in partnership. We own several telescopes there. Top ones there on green, multiple things, and then there's a range of mix of international facilities where we sometimes are in partnership, sometimes we only host them, sometimes we own part of it, but all of them we have agreements where we get some benefit, either just direct cash from which we then pour into our own operations and community support in Sutherland as well, or then direct science benefit from the data from observations. So we make sure that the commodity that we have, dark skies, beautiful, beautiful skies, which other people need, they want, they want to do observation, they want to do science, but they don't have the skies. We have it. That's why they come here, right? So we want that to benefit us, of course, and SALT, and like Kalani again mentioned, SALT is a beautiful example of that, where you enter into international collaboration, a large one. It has to be here because we have something that others don't have, but they pour resources into it, funds into it. They get out what they want, research, science, scientific results, but we get the benefit as well because we get to partner there, we get the extra funds, our community grows. We could use those resources for new people, new training, and so on. So yeah, during SALT's time, for example, like we just heard, the community has tripled. The same thing will happen now over time with Meerkat SKO. So these are really great win-win concepts, and we have to make sure that we're thinking of it strategically, where the country gets the benefit. If you think about it strategically, we don't want to sell the thing that we have to cheap, but get into these win-win partnerships. Okay, just a slide of two last. These are two newest telescopes we have up in Sutherland. NASA funded half-a-meter telescope, protecting the humanity kind. Looking for near Earth potentially hazardous asteroids, and then a Japanese telescope with 1.8 meter prime. So Atlas is working already. Now late last year. The prime, the telescope, the dome went out last year, the telescope earlier this year, but just a few months ago, and actually right as we speak, there's a team commissioning the cameras up there in Sutherland. So that's going to start operations very soon as well. But then, okay, I'll spend a couple of slides on something, and those of you who heard me talk over the last couple of years will definitely know this because I keep preaching this. Kind of one of the central vision things that we have at SAO for this decade is utilizing the whole southern side as a whole. Many other observatories in the world have started decommissioning their smaller telescopes because they put all the money in the largest ones, the biggest ones. Okay, that's a fair decision, and it's a strategic decision that you make. We made the case, seeing what we have over there. We've already had a massive suite of telescopes and instruments. If you use them wisely, it's actually, that adds benefits. If you network them together, put the two dozen telescopes there with multiple dozen different instruments, if you can intelligently use them together automatically, autonomously, that brings something which others really don't have. And that's what we call the Intelligent Observatory Project, where essentially in a stepwise approach, you first start with making sure that we can remotely operate telescopes, and that's indeed exactly what has happened. The highlight of the last couple of years, we can now operate all of our own telescopes here from Cape Town or from anywhere else. And then going towards robotic capabilities and then networked autonomous, no human response needed kind of observation. Something happens in the sky and the whole machinery itself decides what's best to do and does it without all the dead time of us thinking too long. Another recent milestone reach really is on the robotic capabilities, where our the new 1 meter telescope, Lesedi and the old 1 meter, both of them have been used in this IO, Intelligent Observatory concepts, autonomously, where they're getting a trigger from somewhere else in the world, and the whole telescope just automatically using scripts, pre-made scripts, knows what to do, opens up, points the telescope, puts the cameras in, filters in, takes the observations, and even spectroscopy, which those of you who do observations would know that it's much harder because you have to get the target exactly on that tiny little slit. So it's not just point and shoot, but you have to maneuver the telescope very accurately on the slit and start taking spectroscopy. So we managed that automatically as well. Right, but then the future in this realm is something that's, I'm not sure if Charles will mention this as well, but the whole continent-wide network of telescopes, working with our partners throughout the whole continent, with certainly first with existing telescopes in North Africa and Ethiopia, Burkina Faso and others, and the African Astronomical Society networks. Those are really important in making this a reality. And we have some funding to do this already from BRICS side of things, and a very real project. It'll take time. It's not easy. These things are not, there's a massive amount of software development needed, hardware development needed, and then also just policy discussions, who owns the data. There's a massive amount of agreements which need to be made. Okay, a couple of, I mentioned technology earlier. This is just a slide gathering a few recent or new technology instrumentation projects that we've had. Several spectrograph cameras. I won't go into detail. I won't have time, but I think I had a couple of pictures on those. Well, two of these are O30 and Siboneysa. These are two newest instruments on the new 1 meter telescope, and those are kind of at the heart of that intelligent observatory design as well. We're testing those scripts and automated observations on those two instruments. Then we are doing salt-related new instrumentation as well. And here's a nice picture from late last year. I think that one of the first Siboneysa images, very wide field images of the LMC. And my next slide had all of these are new images from these. And these are, I can't actually remember which one is which, as in Siboneysa and Mokodi. But anyway, so I think the point here is that we get a new type of instrumentation And one thing that we actually haven't had at SAO before is large format imaging capabilities. I mean, obviously, we're not doing it only for pretty pictures. There are good reasons to do those for surveys and for, center of the galaxy surveys and whatnot. But in fact, we've now for the first time actually getting these, NASA looking pretty picture images with our new cameras. And hopefully you'll start seeing more of them in the, in publications in the media and all that. Yeah, and that's just because from the tiny cameras we used to have, we're now having that size cameras on the sky. Right, and hopefully you saw this a couple of weeks ago, first the event itself, but just now, yesterday, a couple of days ago, this week we put out a press release on our SAO observations of that really cool project where the NASA DART mission hits Dimorphos and the city Mukudi observations. So Nick Erasmus, not here, but yeah, he and Amanda they took really nice observations of the moment when the probe hit the asteroid, and everybody was surprised by the amount of stuff coming out from that impact. If you looked at the pre-DART mission NASA animation, there's like a little puff, very very insignificant. So this is much bigger what actually didn't happen. But yeah, but indeed. Just a couple of days ago, NASA said that the orbit had changed. So, we don't need to send Bruce Willis up there after all. Sit on a nuclear device, but we can do it. We can do it this way. And yeah, so it was very nice to be right in the thick of this exciting stuff. I'll leave the education outreach astropourism bit to Sigurd. I guess he'll talk about it later, but I'll just mention in the context of this conference about, and yeah, Alana, you mentioned the same thing here, that could there be something where we could collaborate more with ASSA coming, in the coming years. And I think we could and we should think of ways, both here in Cape Town, Sutherland, and elsewhere in astropourism outreach. I think this is something that we could think more about. And okay, I'm hoping we'll give a tour. Yeah, so there's a new visitor center down over there, which hopefully you guys will get to see. Yeah, as Takali mentioned this as well, coming up the General Assembly. I saw from the program that there's a discussion on that this afternoon as well. And this is again something where I'm hoping that together with ASSA, with SA and the whole astronomical community in the country, we are actually together in that. That's a massive operation. My last slide, something I'll just add a tiny personal note on something, because I actually grew up in Finland. I've been here almost 2 decades now, but the equivalent of ASSA in Finland is this one. It's called Ursula. Quite a tongue twister for you guys. Tähtitieteellinen yhdistys. Tähtitieteellinen yhdistys Ursula. Anyway, so it means the Astronomical Society version. And it's actually 101. It was established 1921, right? So it's almost exactly the same age. They had their centenary last year. And I joined it when I was 12 because I was interested in astronomy. I had gotten interested into it. In it, they published a magazine, and that was a big part why I joined. So like every 2 months, so six issues per year, exactly like the Sky Guide over here. They have the same thing. So since 12, I always got it. When I was 14, I got myself through the contacts of the society. They had people who knew about little telescopes. So through their advice, I got there's actually not a picture of that one, but a very similar 15 centimeter Newtonian telescope, which I had in my backyard. Went through the Messier targets, anything visible from the Northern Hemisphere back that time. And I read furiously. So they had a very good publication program. They published books, translated books, so both astronomy things. And that's something to think about. With the ones that I read, like in high school age, they convinced the professional astronomers to write popular books about, and not necessarily one person, one book, because that's often too much. but like, you know, say 12 professionals on different topics and then just get it into in one cover on various topics of current astronomy. And I bought those like a few years before I started studying astronomy. I got those. And of course, they published or translated science fiction as well. No, this is not a recommendation. It was just important for me. I read everything. In fact, so much so that I went to their library last time I visited up there just for nostalgia's sake. And this is all, you know, sci-fi. And it went to the point where the person responsible for the Helsinki library, she always called me when the new one came because she knew that I had read everything published unto that time. Every time there's a new book, hey, this new sci-fi book. Anyway, all that to say that the society, the astronomical society, totally determined what I became. All my astronomy enthusiasm, they fed it. I got interested by it. They fed it. By the time then when I decided what I want to become, I want to study. I wanted to study astronomy. Oh, there's even this kind of a thing. The grade 11, just like over here, there's a job shadow program. I called the observatory, the astronomy department of Helsinki University, if I could come job shadow. They said, no, there's nothing here, nothing interesting. You won't get a career out of this. Don't bother. So I called them the local society. If I could do a job shadow there, even though it wasn't like a job, it was, you know, and they said, yes, of course. And I spent the week with the local, you know, like a Cape Center kind of with enthusiasts who have telescopes, books, and then I wrote a report about that for my school, and that was fine. Again, that was wonderful. And that's the kind of thing I'd want, you know, for ASSA obviously to be making enthusing younger people in that age, but everybody else as well, because we're interested about astronomy. It comes through. Cool. And I'll stop there. Good luck for the next 100 years. And from my part, I do hope that there is, even more engagement than stuff we could do together as the observatory and us. Thanks.
Thank you, Petri. I don't see any fingers on the chat. I don't know if there's any questions in the room. Yes.
Now, could you tell us a little more about atlases, their objects, what sets it apart from other telescopes?
Yeah, so the question is about if you didn't hear online, the question is about Atlas and what makes it different from other telescopes or you know, similar setups. So this is a partnership with NASA, and there's exactly the same kind of telescope in Hawaii and here, and I think Chile as well. Yeah. I'm sure if the one in Chile is working already. It is. Yeah, so there's 3 places, and they're all scanning, again, wide format cameras. So the idea is that they're scanning the whole sky continuously, because they're different sides of the planets. Essentially, the whole universe is covered, right? And they have very, very nice, fancy software to detect anything that's that moves and check whether they are already in the catalogs. And then people, so Nick Erasmus, who was mentioned here, who was part of these observations, he's also part of a team who then, you know, do the human checks whether these are. And indeed, our telescope has found, I forget the number, but several new asteroids already. One of the first ones which they found just a couple of days after it went online, December, was one which actually zoomed in between the Earth and the Moon. So, you know, fairly close. I mean, it wasn't hazardous, but it's never got close. Yeah.
Another question.
Yeah. So what are the limitations of the telescope section?
The limitations
of the telescope.
So I think what Nick said was basically a 10-meter asteroid we should get 2-week notice on, and larger than that, obviously, we get more notice. Anything smaller than that is not really that hazardous. I mean, a 9-meter asteroid you'd notice there would be a big explosion, maybe something like the Russian one, 2012, I think. So it would impact and it would probably cause a bit of damage, but not huge loss to life. So I think that was kind of their well,
Well, yeah.
we'll get 2 weeks on something which is big enough to hold.
And it was 2 weeks enough to react.
Well, we're not going to be able to say dark to it, but if it's
At least you know where,
yeah, you're roughly
You know exactly where
if we put all of our experts like around the world on them, we could probably hone it down to problems. But, it's not perfect, but if you get it down to a city, there is like people out there.
and then the bigger,
100%.
yeah, and then the bigger ones, the hundreds of meters ones, those you should be able to see. And I mean, that's very idea. You know them months or years, and so then you'll have enough time, plenty of time to do the kinds of things.
Yeah, I think we know 99% of anything larger than.
But you want it to be 100.
But yeah, so there's only one more question and we can move on. Any possibility of remote operation of telescopes outside? Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, and we have actually done it already, both with SALT and the other telescopes. And what often comes up in this kind of the same question is that what are the security issues? You know, can somebody hack our telescopes and somebody take over? No, we very, very conscious of the possible security holes, and that the system is such that you essentially within our own internal network, wherever you are, you use that kind of things. But yeah, but the idea is that yes, you can use our telescopes from wherever. It makes it convenient, and especially in the African context, African continent is very important because many of these places that we work with, they wouldn't have the resources to send people over for observations, whereas we want them to use and get the research data and publish papers. Cool, thanks. I'll be here a couple of time and lunch as well for any more questions.
Petri Vaisanen.